Ah, there you are. I've been waiting. Here, take a seat. Yes, I know why you came here. You wish to know what lies at the throbbing heart of horniness. The spirits in their wisdom have led you here, my child, to hard choices, where we divine the median, the zenith, and the nadir of fuckability. But, more importantly, what you will discover is your own spirit boner to guide you in times of great horniness. Today, for your journey, we will focus only on the Major Arcana. The Minor Arcana focus on everyday decisions you must make, but the Major Arcana focus on the bigger picture and the long-term direction of your life. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit of a size queen. We make laugh. Now, take this deck. No, I said deck. I don't run that kind of business in the front of the shop. Now, take it and shuffle it while visualizing your energy flowing into the deck and back out. And in and out. Slower. Don't lose the rhythm. Okay, never mind. This is going to take some additional specialized spirit work. To assist you, I first call on a spirit, the great maker of lists, my late husband, Dan Mulkerin.
Hang on. What if I want to neither writer nor wait? Is there a third option here? No. You were always like this when you were like, okay, never mind. We cannot get into this. Next, I call on a spirit who was most meticulous and analytical, Kris Newton.
I was meticulous. I did a 1-card spread for this episode to see who would win. But I got the lovers and the fool stuck together. And at first I didn't know what that meant, but then I realized the winner of this episode is going to be the same as the winner of every episode. Horny dumbasses everywhere.
See, he is good, right? I only summon the best for you. And finally, I call on a spirit of boners and the heart, the horniest of all spirits, MeganBob.
I do have a tarot deck, and it's the unicorn tarot deck, because of course it is.
Oh, we'll get to unicorns. Oh, my name, of course. I am the psychic and median Kit Mulkerin. For this session, we will rank every card in the Major Arcana except for the last one in sequence, the World. But do not worry, they hold a special place in this session. The spirits and I will independently rank each card from most to least fuckable, but we will each begin with our median, the most meh of the fucks. We will work down through the bottom 10 to the nadir, then go back up through the top until we reach the zenith. As we do so, the spirits and I will give a brief reading on our decision. Some reads shadier than others, but each of us may be moved up to 3 times to give a longer reading. In the spirit world, these are called big feels. When the session is complete, we will then divine the true list. And because the spirits have questions of their own, we will unpack some of the more contentious readings. Now, it is important you understand what fuckability truly means. Listen carefully to your spirit guide, MeganBob.
Fuckability is not about what they look like. It's about what they fuck like. So assume these cards are into you. You're into these cards. How good is the sex? And indeed, what is it like?
We are almost ready to begin. But first, let us familiarize you with the cards that you are going to fuck. Yes.
0, the Fool. The card that starts the Major Arcana and represents the beginning of one's journey through life, and is usually depicted as a youth with a bindle striking out into the world while being harangued by his pet to pay attention to his surroundings before something bad happens. Basically, Ash Ketchum.
Number 1, the Magician. A man in a red robe holds his magic wand aloft with one hand while he points toward the ground with the other, perhaps identifying the point of origin for whatever spell he's casting. Let's say, Stinking Cloud. A wand, sword, cup, and pentacle are on the table in front of him. Roses and lilies surround him, because LARPing is allowed at the park on Saturdays. The magician represents the meeting of higher and lower worlds, and the manifestation of desire through will. Will is the GM.
Number 2, the High Priestess. Representing the divine feminine, the High Priestess comes complete with the feminine symbolism starter kit of pomegranates, a lunar crescent at her feet, and blue robes from the Virgin Mary's Immaculate Yard Sale. She sits between the pillars of Solomon's Temple in an occult prefiguring of the guy yells at bored girl in club meme.
Number 3, the Empress, a card representing fertility, femininity, life, and creativity. The classic Rider-Waite deck depicts the Empress on a throne surrounded by a field of grain. There's no pamphlet warning against the evils of GMOs explicitly represented in the art, so we are left to assume it lurks just off panel. The Mythic Tarot deck represents her with the Greek goddess Demeter, and in the video game Marvel's Midnight Suns, the Empress is represented by the X-Men character Storm.
Number 4, the Emperor. One of the peepums of the deck. The Emperor hangs out on his throne holding his favorite stuff. A scepter and an orb. Yes, the Emperor needs to get out more. That's probably why he represents authority, structure, and control. Someone get this man into Animal Crossing.
Number 5, the Hierophant. The card shows a religious figure with a lot of religious symbols doing religious stuff, like offering benediction, which is a really solid bro thing of him to do. Thank you, bro. And yes, he represents conformity and tradition, but he also represents knowledge. Maybe even the knowledge of how to say Hierophant without sounding like a tool.
Number 6, the Lovers. Adam and Eve, or perhaps two randos who are naked for their own reasons, stand alongside the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, representing relationships and choices. An angel hovers over the lovers to remind us that God is with us when we fuck. And if he can't make it, he sends someone to watch.
Number 7, the Chariot, represents war, freedom, triumph, and empowerment. In Rider-Waite, the chariot is being driven by an armored figure and pulled by two sphinxes. No one is high-fiving in the artwork, which really seems like the artist is trying to misrepresent the feeling intended here. The god Ares drives the chariot in the Mythic Tarot deck, while in Midnight Suns, the chariot is represented by the Silver Surfer.
Number 8, Strength. A card representing both courage and compassion. The art is almost unbearably fraught with symbolism. A young woman, so soft, so feminine, calmly holds open the jaws of a lion, so strong, so powerful. How can one card contain so much contrast, the Rider-Waite artist probably said to himself while enjoying a self-congratulatory handjob.
Number 9, the Hermit. We see a barren cliff, and standing atop it is a robed figure holding a lantern in one hand and a staff in the other. This peepums is the Hermit, a symbol of withdrawal, circumspection, wisdom, and recovery. Also, I imagine MeganBob is standing just outside the frame.
Just like...
Number 10, the Wheel of Fortune. The accidents and dramatic reversals of life are represented by the Wheel of Fortune. In Rider-Waite, it bears symbols of the four elements, as well as the letters T-A-R-O, as well as the Tetragrammaton, as well as symbols of the four tarot suits. Its busy design gives us the phrase, throwing shit at the wheel to see what sticks.
Number 11, Justice, represents fairness, equality, and compassion, all as expressed through righteous law. The figure depicted in the card's artwork holds a sword in one hand, a set of golden scales in the other, and a look on their face that clearly invites the viewer to fuck around and find out. The Mythic Tarot deck chooses Athena to represent justice, and in Midnight Suns, justice is represented by She-Hulk.
Number 12, the Hanged Man. I bet you're wondering how I got here, the Hanged Man seems to say. And indeed, the fact that he's hanging upside down from 1 foot by the World Tree does suggest that he's having a wild day. Don't worry though, it's of his own free will because he represents sacrifice, but also waiting in contemplation, and perhaps, inevitably, changes in perspective.
Number 13, Death. A skeletal figure rides a pale horse through a field strewn with the lifeless bodies of people from all walks of life, peasants to kings. This card represents endings and change, not that you will die, because that is obvious.
Number 14, Temperance. In a triumph of esoteric symbology, this card represents temperance. In the Rider-Waite deck, it depicts an angelic being pouring liquid from one vessel into another while standing with 1 foot in water. This primitive field sobriety test has since been supplanted by the finger-to-nose thing.
Number 15, the Devil. A complex card. Depending on who you ask, the Devil can mean anything from revenge, violence, or destiny, to the taboos shunned by modern culture, to the dark impulses that lurk within the human heart. Rider-Waite portrays the Devil as the figure Baphomet, flanked by a chained incubus and succubus. Pan is the Devil of the Mythic Tarot deck. In Midnight Suns, the Devil is represented by Damon Hellstrom.
Number 16, the Tower. The card represents upheaval, chaos, and disaster, which has made it an unpopular one to show up in readings. In fact, so powerful is the urge to flee this difficult card that the art shows two dudes straight up noping out the window of the lightning-struck tower just to get away.
Number 17, the Star. Beneath one giant star and 7 little ones, a naked woman pours water onto the land with one jug, and water into a pool with another jug. The star represents the hopeful beneficence of the cosmos smiling down on the woman, as though to say, nice jugs.
Number 18, the Moon. In the Rider-Waite deck, the moon glows above 2 pillars, a wolf and a dog, and a crayfish crawling up out of the water onto a path that leads into the distance. The moon represents fear, confusion, danger, and the supernatural, all of which would come to mind for me if I saw a crayfish casually stroll out of the water and start hiking into town.
Number 19, the Sun. Represents happiness, the self, and the triumph of knowledge over fear and ignorance. In the traditional artwork, the sun itself beams its rays down upon the world, while a naked baby rides a horse. For as much as this is supposed to be about the banishing of ignorance, this artwork definitely leaves me with some questions. Anyway, the Mythic Tarot deck doesn't reinvent the wheel and goes with the god Apollo, while Midnight Suns assigns this card to the Human Torch.
And finally, number 20, Judgment. Despite the finality of the name, the card is interpreted as awakenings and reckoning. The Rider-Waite art tries to suggest this by showing a nude woman, among others, holding out her hands for some trumpet toots in a please sir I want some more way. Which is what I've always felt like when I have a big realization.
Perfect. We are ready. Now, I suppose I should start us off with the median, number 11. My median is the sun. Oh, guys, by the way, my voice sometimes changes when I do this. I'm channeling, past and future me's. It's happening right now, so don't be weirded out. This is part of the experience. Anyway, yeah, the sun. Their super positive personality draws you in. They're beautiful. They're encouraging. You come back for more and they welcome you. You think the sun shines out of their perfect ass, but eventually you realize they're one of those toxic positivity types, and so you leave to find some cloud cover. Mm-hmm. Bob, you had big reactions. Who's your 11?
Strength! It's raining. You're both crying for reasons that make total sense and are very evocative, but we obviously can't get into for this. You both get back to your place and you peel off your soggy clothes. Something is wrong. Let's not get into it. It's too difficult. And it can't be fixed at this moment, but you can have each other. You can have this. Like the emotion at a boiling point with nowhere to go but fucking. That is not a bad fuck to have. This is not relationship advice. Don't fuck away your problems. Although you should definitely fuck your problems.
Neither Loud Bob nor Quiet Bob are doctors.
Facts.
Hi Bob is a doctor.
Kris, how say you?
Big feels right away.
Oh, okay.
So I did my ratings in kind of a weird way because tarot cards are reversible, right? So like if you turn them over, then they can mean like the opposite of what they mean, or they can mean the bad version of what they mean. So it's very difficult to rank. Also very difficult to use for divination, oddly enough. So what I did is I took like the good version of the card and the bad version of the card, and I applied numerical values to them and I subtracted. So my median is the Devil because it scored highest on both my positive and negative lists for a net fuckability of 0. At its worst, the Devil represents the very worst case scenario in sex. Cruelty, boundary crossing, sexual mistreatment, even taking the premise of the show that the Devil is into me. There are people out there who do this to people they're into, can only be the bottom of the list. However, if we're talking about indulging dark desires in a way that isn't abusive. We're talking about the kind of aggressive, possessive, boundary-pushing, darkness-indulging sex that is my absolute favorite. If you've never been drunk with power and made somebody gag on a dildo just because they're yours to play with, you're not going to get it. But listen, even allowing for the difficulty of expressing this sort of thing safely and consensually, I cannot go lower than 11 here, if only so that the brave soul who choked on that big fake dick did not gag in vain. Wherever you are, I salute you.
Hopefully still alive. Dan, follow that.
Yeah, my number 11 is the Empress.
Okay.
She's hard to miss. Of all the vendors running stalls at the farmer's market, she's the only one actively taking calls on her Bluetooth while simultaneously helping customers pick out cucumbers and eggplant. You'd later learn that she's planning to start up a new neighborhood co-op, using her connections with nearby small farms as a way of building a base of locally sourced produce. But you learn that afterward. After the farmer's market closes for the day, after you volunteer to help her load her leftover produce into the back of her EV minivan, and after she pulls you into the back seat of that same minivan with an impish grin on her face. Even when the two of you make love, she never stops taking calls on her Bluetooth.
Oof. On to number 12. For me, it's the Magician. They are uniquely gifted. Maybe it means they know what that one neat trick to make come every single time is, or maybe they can use close-up magic to make a dove fly out of your panties with your favorite kind of condom in its beak. Either way, gifts not to be wasted. Bob.
The Hierophant. Or Hierophant? Elephant.
Hierophant.
What? Yeah. Yeah. Delicious. Like the thrill of the taboo fuck. Get you a reversed Hierophant.
Oh, that's my favorite position.
Yeah. It's that push to do something like so far, not just beyond what you thought you would do, but who you thought you were. Like, you want the fuck that changes who you are at a fundamental level. Nothing is more powerful. It's like, you know, sometimes in life, like, you get XP by doing certain things. This fuck is like 500 points of XP and may, in fact, rewrite your character concept.
Ooh, exciting. All right, Kris.
Number 12 for me is Temperance. Temperance is an oddity on the list because I don't care for its positive meaning, but the reversed meaning really does it for me. I know I am technically and objectively wrong about this, but search your feelings as I try this both ways. Okay, A, I'm going to steal you away from your responsibilities. Sit back in an armchair and watch while I make you strip, tie your hands with a scarf, bend you over the dining room table, and fuck you like nothing else matters until we're both glassy-eyed and panting and sore for a week. B, I'm going to fuck you so moderately. Better one or better
two? Dan.
My number 12 is the Fool.
Oh, okay.
Maybe taking home the sexually inexperienced 20-year-old was a mistake. This guy is clearly just starting to explore what it means to be an adult on planet Earth, and it becomes immediately clear that he has no clue how to please another person. Thankfully, he seems to know that he's still at the beginning of his journey and is actively trying to learn and grow. It's not the most sexually gratifying experience you've ever had, but you feel like you've taught this guy a thing or two. You keep his number, and you make a mental note to give him a call in a couple of years.
Aww. That's actually a pretty good science experiment. No, sorry, a science break. Gotta check back with your subjects.
Do you want longitudinal data?
Yes. All right, for me, number 13 is The Chariot, and it is a big feel. Strap in. They ride a motorcycle. They smoke cigarettes. You're fucking sure as hell ain't lovemaking. You're fucking will break no less than 3 pieces of decor and at least 1 piece of furniture. They will rock you like a hurricane that just passed over a Marlboro factory. They will leave you before you wake up. They will show up randomly at your job and convince you to fuck in the custodial closet. But they will slip the janitor a 50, so don't worry about it. Then you won't hear from them for months. When you, of course, then hook up again. They never gave you their number. They just show up. And you realize you never told them where you work. You get the sense that they're probably a very dangerous person, but when they show up again years later, it's deja fucking vu.
I also have the chariot for number 13.
Hey.
This one's hard to interpret, but when reversed, it can represent both the negative side of desire and the opposite of mobility and agency, which is passivity. So to me, that adds up to a double-decker disappointment of a fuck. Someone who's physically passive, but psychologically an obstinate, demanding taker rather than a giver. A real babe, will you make me a smoothie of a fuck. On the other hand, mobility and positive desire add up to the amazing experience you can have on a sex vacation with a long-distance partner. And as a long-distance relationship veteran, I do appreciate the intensity of settling into a vacation fuck and working out months of sexual frustration over one weekend. The bad barely outweighs the good with this card. Ideally, we would consider the fuck nests decor, but gun to my head, it's a 13.
All right, Bob, what about you?
The High Priestess. There is a sweet spot here for me with this, okay? Because this person owns a lot of crystals. But the question is, do they own a few? Or do they own too many? If they own just a few, I feel like they're a goddamn crystal apologist and I don't need that. Don't own crystals you don't stand by. If this person's room is 50% crystals and crystal-themed objects, this is going to be the sacred fuck that causes the moon to rise, the rains to come, and the crops to flourish, and I am all in. Frankly, if they don't bring up aligning our chakras before sex, then I am definitely going to bring it up.
Dan?
My number 13 is Wheel of Fortune. So, the first time you fuck, it's in the supply closet at work. Mm-hmm. When you put your clothes back on, you notice a valuable-looking watch on the ground. No one has reported it missing at the Lost and Found, so you get to keep it, and you later sell it for $200. Mm-hmm. The second time you fuck, it's in the backseat of your car. The angle ends up being bad, and you throw out your back. The third time you fuck, you're laid up in bed trying to recover, and something about the way Wheel of Fortune sits on your hips manages to fix your back again. The fourth time you fuck, you decide to do something romantic and light some candles. Wheel of Fortune accidentally kicks over one of them and sets your curtains on fire. Wheel of Fortune is a good fuck as often as they are a bad fuck, but they are always an interesting fuck.
Very good point. I don't like the fire. Anyway, sorry. Number 14. For me, the Emperor. Daddy with a capital D-A-D-D and Y. Now, I hope you weren't planning on topping, because no. He's kind of the epitome of masculinity, and even if it's positive, it's not my fave. But what say you, Bob? 14?
Big feels.
Oh, okay.
The Tower. We have all been less than our complete, authentic sexual selves at times. Not communicated our needs, like hidden stuff about ourselves, or just evolved and like grown beyond who we used to be. The Tower is not any one sexual encounter. The Tower is a place in life. The Tower might be bad sex. It's almost certainly bad sex. But it is bad sex that is on its way to being good sex. It's on its way to being real sex. The sex that connects to like the deepest part of you. Everyone hates the Tower because it's upheaval and it's hard and it's painful. And it is, but if you're going to cling to what you have because you're scared of that, you're never going to have anything more. Fuck that. Tear it down to the foundation and know that whatever you're reaching for, it is goddamn worth it.
Kris?
My number 14 is also the Tower.
Hey.
And in fact, oddly, directed at you, Bob. Sorry, I didn't know what your rankings were, and so this is directed at you as though you would be coming at me for this ranking, so let's just pretend.
Okay.
I know what you're thinking, Bob, and only Bob. How can you not be horny for disaster? I am. Do you think I've never stayed up too late being drunk and horny and had to podcast half dead the next day? I've done it. I've done it on this feed. But the reversed meaning of unmitigated disaster is disaster that can be mitigated, and that is unsexy. Responsible, routine, boundary-maintaining sex where something doesn't quite go right and you communicate effectively about it. I'm not saying don't do it. It pays off. They say that Thomas Edison found 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb before he hit on the way that worked. Every one of those prototype light bulbs were important and necessary, but that doesn't mean I want them in my fucking bedroom.
Dan?
My number 14 is my first big feels of the episode.
Oh boy.
Oh, man.
And it is The Hermit.
Okay.
You sigh, staring out the window at the gray rain outside. You had big plans for your day off. Show off your new outfit, go to that new sushi place with your friends, maybe go dancing, see if you can find someone cute and fun to hook up with tonight. You have been unusually horny recently. But right now, all of it, even just the prospect of changing out of your PJs and putting on real adult clothing, it seems like a lot. Too much, in fact. You should have texted your friends saying that you're feeling a bit under the weather and that you'll have to catch up with them next week. With that burden removed, you start flipping through your list of shows to catch up on, but you keep getting distracted by how horny you still are. Well, now you have plenty of time to address that, and you do know exactly what sorts of things you're into.
Oh, it's
That's
you?
Nice.
You're the hermit? Mind blown. Oh my God. Has anyone ever put themselves on the list secretly?
Well, Claire did say that water from the Powerade tap was masturbation in a Weird
Yes.
Choices episode,
Okay.
so I feel
That
like
is true.
that's about as close as it's come.
Oh, this is going in hard data.
That's right.
All right. That brings us to, I believe, number 15, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
For me, it's the Hierophant. They are a teacher, but they will not come to you. Even if they like you, sex is business. Once you pay for their services, you will be taught more about your own body than you thought there was to know. Oh no. Is that what I'm into? Yeah, it is. Bob?
The Empress. I don't get this one. I never get this one. She's pretty and sweet and serene and connected and I mean, I like languid sex. I just would never put it at the top of the list or even the top half of a list. I just feel like this sex is going to be shot by somebody who thinks that long black and white panning shots of legs tangled in bed sheets is peak sexy. And all I can taste is the vanilla ice cream.
But what about the little bean flecks? What about the legit vanilla ice cream? Isn't that good?
Look, good bean flecks, some like bourbon in there, we could talk. But like, no, if this is Breyers, no.
Kid, I legit heard that as like FLEX, and I thought you were talking about a sex move.
Bean I mean, ¿por qué no los dos?
I mean, Kit is very online, so Kit could be like,
That's right.
I'm gonna pretend I've done a bean flex.
I mean, have you not heard about the bean flex? And we're like,
Jeez, of course.
yeah, no, the bean flex?
Yeah.
We know about that. I've also been on the internet.
Is that just like a new version of a Kegel, but with your clitoris? Is that?
I love that this is its own tarot card. You're all reading
Yeah, it is.
your own bean flex. It's beautiful.
Listen to your heart. What is your bean flex?
Kris, what is your bean flex?
My bean flex is death.
Ooh.
The death card doesn't represent death. It represents change, and therefore loses many points in my rankings. Say what you will about getting hit by a train. At least it's fucking easy. Changing your travel plans on a train, always a pain in the ass. In the best case scenario, this is where a role play breaks down, or your partner finds out they're not into this kind of humiliation, and you discover a new and deeper sexual dynamic underneath. Very good, still hard. Reversed, a sexy gesture or situation flops, and someone will not let it die. Oh, we bought a whole box of popsicles and you're determined to use them all? Okay, I have an idea for tonight. Why don't you try sharpening one and plunging it through my fucking heart? In the long run, that would be a mercy.
Oh my god. Dan, your bean flex?
My bean flex, aka my number 15, is Justice. You first meet him when he's assigned to be your probation officer.
Ooh.
The sexual attraction isn't immediately apparent, but it doesn't take long before it starts to grow. You make your feelings and intentions clear multiple times, and it's clear he's into you, but he refuses to do anything while he still has a responsibility to maintain a professional distance. Finally, after months, you're off probation, and you're finally able to consummate everything you've been feeling for these months. And it's fine.
Oh!
You kind of wish you didn't have to wait so long to get it, but it really couldn't have been any other way. That's just who this guy is.
Tragic. I was just gonna say, is this because we just recently watched Raising Arizona? Right, that you have this like
maybe
prisoner officer fantasy.
I like that's the saddest story I've ever heard.
It's like a creepypasta just for Bob.
I know. I was like,
the sex was just okay.
No.
All right.
Anything but that. Why not? Not cum in the eye, not anything.
Oh, it wasn't even bad. Okay, yeah, sorry. Anyway, this is too spoopy. We have to move on.
I know, I'm going to have nightmares.
Number 16 for me, it's Wheel of Fortune. Oh no. This is one of those frenetic folk who's always looking for their next big break. During your first hookup, they just scored big and will wine and dine and be an excitable, though fairly middle-of-the-road lover. But the next time you meet, oh no, their big break just fell out from under them. They're feeling down and want some cheer-up sex. Though I love a sad, let it be known, I think Wheel of Fortune is just too focused on what's next on their path rather than the moment. So, not really. Well, no, not much there. Bob, what about you?
Justice. Oh, man. The fuck of reasonable expectations. The fuck of fairness and compromise. Yes, please, I say to the smutty fanfic I'm reading, please tell me more about how the sex is going to have an equitable distribution of orgasms. Fuck off.
Kris?
My number 16 is the Emperor. I can get into a daddy, but a sir is not my thing. I have had a positive experience with a dom who's shown up with a very clear plan about where I'm going to come and how I'm going to clean it up, but it's rare for someone to exercise that kind of structured authority in a way that I like. The more common reversed Emperor is just the kid who wanted to dictate what everybody else was going to do at their birthday party, only grown up and lacking the decency to offer cake as a bribe.
Dan?
My number 16 is the Hierophant. You've only been dating the Reverend for 4 months before he proposes to you. Despite the fact that, so far, the only physical intimacy you've received from him has been a chaste kiss on the forehead, you decide to say yes.
Oh, no.
He's a great listener, he gives insightful and accurate advice, and he genuinely seems to care about you. The wedding is fine, tasteful, no real surprises, and that night, your first night as a married couple, he tenderly lays you on your marriage bed, and you proceed to have the kind of sex that couples who have been married for 30 years have.
Oh!
It's not bad sex, but it's certainly not what you were expecting from losing your virginity on your wedding night. There's no indication that this sex was ever built on anything approaching passion. Commitment, mutual respect, companionship, yes, but not passion. It's like the wedding. Tasteful. No real surprises.
Oh!
Oof doofa. Well, that is why the song is about the son of the preacher man, not the preacher man. All right. Now for my 17, death. You meet them at a time in your life when you're at your most vulnerable, desperate for a fresh start. They're a hot goth who's into some kink you wouldn't normally try, but right now, sure, what the hell. And afterward, hey, maybe sounding wasn't your jam, but you did kind of like summoning a spirit for that spooky menage a trois. Kris made a good face.
Yeah.
You're like, He made the kombucha girl good? Kris.
Well, Jesus, I didn't know that was on the table, but all right. Number 17, the Hermit. The Hermit is, of course, defined by being alone. On another podcast, I'd go into a tangent here about the paradox of sex being fundamentally interpersonal, but also a vital locus of autonomy and self-image. But on this podcast, I'll point out that while getting permission to fuck somebody while they're sleeping is an appealing fantasy of solitary sex for an introvert, it is not realistic. What is realistic is being the neglected third of a shitty three-way because your partners are both smart enough to realize that any one of the 4 tits in the room is independently more fun than an AMAB's whole body, at least until the big closing number. I know. Who would have thought that loneliness would be unsexy? But there you go.
Bob?
The Emperor. I mean, look, fake daddy. I know. He's the father figure of the deck and has all the authority, but so remote, but not steely. Just remote. Like, the fuck do I need this person for? The fuck do I need this person who can only do, like, rigid discipline? Or, God forbid, if reversed, wants a power struggle? I am swiping left on this Tywin Lannister wannabe motherfucker.
Ooh.
It's the wannabe, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm like, if you were Tywin Lannister, we could talk. But I'm like, you're not.
Dan?
My number 17 is The Lovers.
Okay.
You're excited at first when the young couple approaches you at the hotel bar. They're attractive and they have an energy about them that's undeniably compelling. They noticed you earlier, and they've spent the last 15 minutes just talking about how attractive they both find you. Do you, maybe want to come up to their room and see where the night takes you? You say yes. What results is technically a threesome, in that 3 human bodies are involved, but what you quickly find out is that the night isn't about the 3 of you. It's about the 2 of them. You are the extra element that they have selected to spice things up tonight. Yesterday, it was a strap-on. Tomorrow, it will be fuzzy handcuffs and gay porn. Today, it's you. Afterward, the couple mentioned that they have to get up early tomorrow, and so you should probably go back to your hotel room. And you spend that night staring up at the ceiling, feeling just a bit emptier inside.
Oh, they're scum. Don't ever be like those people, kids. Aunt Bob is telling you, don't fucking do that.
All right. For my number 18, temperance. First of all, it's going to take forever to get to the actual sex. Temperance is going to lead you on the chase for so long. You're pretty sure this is actually what their kink is, you know? Like just the will they, won't they? Where they have all the power? Nuh-uh. And when you do finally smash, of course they're into tantric.
Oh
no. I don't got time for that shit. Bob.
The magician. Dom with big ideas. I love high concept bullshit, but the risk reward here is terrible. The guy who promises you he can fulfill all your wildest dreams of fucking in an abandoned Blockbuster during a full moon while you're in the middle of a pentagram made of VHS tapes. We all want it, but can the guy deliver? Look, some of them can come through, but most magicians are not going to be detail-oriented enough to track down a VHS copy of Mouse Hunt. So temper your expectations here. P.S. Anybody remember Mouse Hunt?
Yeah, nothing sets the mood for a sexual encounter like Mouse Hunt.
I saw it in theaters. It was terrible then, too.
Yep.
Kris?
Number 18 for me is the star. The star represents hope, especially in the wake of negative experiences. And I've definitely had some powerful sexual experiences with people who are just emerging from real bad shit. Powerful enough that I can't really rank them. What's not hard to rank is the reversed star, hopeless sex, where it becomes clear in mid-fuck that you're with someone who is not interested in fucking you and nothing good is going to happen here. But to end on a positive note, abandon hope, all ye who enter here would be a badass tattoo for a sexy Renaissance literature scholar to get, divided up over both inner thighs.
Wow. Indeed. Dan?
My number 18 is the Hanged Man. You've been together for a long time, and while you know that at one time it was good, even great, it hasn't been that way for a while. When you have sex, it's more out of a sense of habit and obligation than anything approaching passion or mutual attraction. Honestly, the best thing to come out of this is the realization that something needs to change.
All right. Number 19, for me, that's judgment. They're your ex, but you talk and they really seem like they've grown a lot. And they look really good. And, and you hook up. Whoops. Oh, no. But they fuck better than you remember. And they're great at that thing you like. But afterward, they get really clingy and not so subtly imply you should lose weight and have been telling everyone that you're back together. No. This is not worth that thing you like. Bob.
The Chariot. I get such dude bro fuck energy off this card. I'm sorry. I mean, I know this card probably has nuance. I bet it does. It's probably got a lot of things to recommend it, and I know the sex is going to be self-assured and competent, but I will be concerned at every second that I'm going to be told about NFTs, and I would rather die.
Kris?
Number 19 for me is the Sun. The Sun represents a straight-up, uncomplicated, positive, lovey-dovey fuck. You know, like for losers. I mean, yes, it's wonderful. It's the very best, but only while you're having it. I'm too cool for that right now. I'm on a podcast. The reversed Sun, on the other hand, represents miserable, pessimistic, self-hating depression sex that leaves you feeling worse than ever about you and your partner and too listless for a shower. What is this card's problem? I have to choose between sad sex and happy sex? Am I a fucking peasant? I choose neither. The sun can fuck itself.
On that note, Dan?
My number 19 is the Emperor.
Okay.
When you decided to vacation in a foreign land, the last thing you would have expected would have been to catch the eye of that nation's monarch. He invites you to his palace, flaunts his wealth and power, provides you with an exquisite meal, and finally has you brought to his lavishly decorated bedchamber, where you proceed to have one of the most disappointing and ungratifying sexual experiences of your life. It turns out, when you consider yourself king of the world, you don't see much reason to value giving pleasure to others.
Okay, girl, but he got money, so, like...
Well, that's why we have 4 hosts, Kit, so that you can bring up this very important consideration.
Look,
you did rank the Emperor the highest, so that checks out.
I didn't even think of him as having money, but I would have put him even higher than that. I would have put him way higher on my list.
You're like, which of these tarot cards is the richest?
All right. So my number 20 is the Hanged Man. He is the definition of resting on pretty. This man is so good looking, you're like, so he said a few red flags. At least he physically turns me on. I've certainly said something along those lines many times on this show. But then he turns out to be a no foreplay having, 2-pump chump that says you need to leave before his girlfriend gets back. Oof. Ugh, no. And you probably don't even have money. Anyway, Bob.
The Wheel of Fortune. Does not matter how the sex is. This could be the best sex in the world, and I would still rank it here. Because you come, and you're glowing, and you feel elated and happy. And then they roll over, and they say, by the way, we need to talk. No. Under no circumstances.
Wow, I need to know more. That's a cliffhanger. You can't just tell. What is it?
That's the Wheel of Fortune. I don't know either.
All right. Oh, Kris?
Number 20 for me is the Moon. I really struggled with this one because the Moon is mysterious and magical, and I love a mysterious, magical fuck. Sometimes you have like this weird, inexplicably compelling experience with someone you care about a lot. We have a couple on the show, Dan and Kit. You've probably had that with each other at some point. Bob, you've probably had this with some kind of private fanfic about Hamburglar. Everyone has had this. But the reversed Moon is about nocturnal confusion, deceit, hidden feelings, dangers. And to me, that brings to mind the middle of the night fuck, where your feelings are all confused and misguided, and you're half consciously working out shit that has nothing to do with your partner, might have to do with someone else. I love a mystery fuck, but it's not worth that.
Okay. Dan?
I just want to point out at this point, we now have every card on the table. Every card has been represented at least once, which I think is the first time I can remember this happening this early.
Yep.
Normally, there's a few holdouts that like everyone puts high.
Yeah.
But we're not even done with the bottom half, and all of the cards have been brought up at least once, which maybe speaks to the interpretive nature of this one.
Yeah.
Anyway, just wanted to throw it out there.
Thank you.
My number 20 is Judgment. Once you're both naked, he lies back on the bed with his hands behind his head and looks at you expectantly. You're momentarily at a loss before you decide to go down on him. You occasionally glance up to see if he's enjoying himself, but he's just watching you. You can't help but feel like he's grading your performance in his head. He's completely passive the entire encounter. Afterward, you ask, with a great deal of reluctance, if it was good for him. He shrugs. I'd give it a 4 out of 10.
Oh. Started off like, okay, maybe this is some people's thing. I was like, oh, no, that's going bad. Oh, and I think at that, we are now at 21, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, for me, the very bottom of the list is the devil. They drew you in with their free spirit, take you back to their place where they seem to have every flavor of drug and sex toy, but damn are they pushy about you trying all sorts of stuff that you aren't into. Like, their kink seems to be your discomfort, and for me, that's a deal breaker. Bob, who's the worst card to pull?
The moon. I cannot explain to you why this is terrible in a way that will really click. Like, I can't adequately describe to you why I'm not into sex where things aren't totally clear and there's some sense of, like, truth being obscured, all that. Because, like, you have listened to the show, but I'm just going to say the phrase that encapsulates it best. Everything's fine.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
The worst. Kris, who is the worst?
My number 21 is the Magician, who is the reason that I did the list the way that I did. Because upright, it represents a deep, profound intentionality in eliciting the power of sex. I think of it in terms of writing because that's what does it for me. But the Magician could represent anyone who knows how to use their craft to get you. And I love that. But I don't love it as much as I hate the reversed Magician, which is about using manipulation and deception to inflict your desires on someone else. The fuck that you go along with happily in the moment, but it leaves you feeling bad because it was dishonest and it's worse for having made you feel something real. My disgust for that is even bigger than my boner for an excellent smutty story. And I assure you, that is a big boner to be bigger than.
Dan, who's the worst for you?
I feel kind of basic for saying this, but my number 21 is the Tower.
All right. No.
You wake up with a pounding hangover and realize you got blackout drunk the night before. You did it with your next door neighbor, who you don't even find particularly attractive. And you somehow managed to live stream the entire thing on Facebook.
Oh!
You see that you've missed dozens of frantic and furious texts from your friends, your family, your boss, and your fiance. But you don't need to check them to know what they're talking about.
Oof.
Oh. That's, I don't know. I feel that one. Oh no. All right. And with that, we are finally ready for better days. Let's reverse the cards and go back up. Starting with number 10. For me, that's the Star. They're like if the manic pixie dream girl was real and not the hollow fantasies of cishet dudes in crisis. The Star comes into your boring-ass life and inspires new passions. You're getting out there again. You're living. You're not just touching grass. You're making love on grass. And I'd actually rather not fuck on grass. Can we at least put down a blanket? Maybe I need some boring for balance after all. Bob, what about you?
I don't want ants in my butt.
This card represents getting ants in your butt.
Oh, God. Better than gerbils, I guess.
Temperance. I can only party with this card if reversed because I want excess. Like, I know, patience, balance, all important in real life. In the sex matrix, I want, like, the 3-day stand where, like, neither of us has put on our clothes since Friday night, and now it's Sunday afternoon. We have lost track of how many times we have had sex. the DoorDash people have started to include water with our orders just because they're going, oh no, you've ordered an awful lot of food and have not left the house. We're concerned.
Kris.
Number 10 for me is the hanged man. You might think the hanged man is in a pretty unsexy position. Obviously, I'm not talking about the physical position. That's basically like a figure 4 leg lock, inherently erotic. We all understand that. I mean the fact that he's in public view. He's stuck in one place. This is not an ideal position for any actual sex act. However, if you've ever been horny while you were stuck in public view with a partner, not physically able to have the sex you'd like to be having, you know the next best thing is having private fun in public. It's always frustrating to wait, which is why the hanged man doesn't score higher. But if you never had to go out in public with your partner and hang out with friends while you're impatiently horny together, you'd never get to pull them aside and whisper, I want your panties off the minute we're alone. And that would be a shame.
Oh, it's all very good points. All right, Dan.
My number 10 is the moon. When you get back to your place, she offers you some weird multicolored pills from a drawstring pouch. You proceed to have the most mind-bending trip of your entire life. You definitely have sex during this, but the details of it get lost amidst the comets made of flowers and polar bears that speak with the voice of your teacher from 2nd grade. When you finally come to the next morning, your date is gone. And so is your TV.
On to number 9. For me, that is the High Priestess. She's another teacher type, like the Hierophant, but she's in it for the love of the game. However, unless you have a shame kink, this will not be your favorite sexual encounter. Having the flaws in my techniques pointed out isn't my idea of fun, though I will appreciate it later on, and also because it hasn't been said yet on the show. BJ is right there on the card. Right there, so you know what's up. Slow-hanging fruit, and I picked it. Bob, how about you?
The hanged man.
Hey.
The fuck of finally. Always good. Always. If you've been apart for too long, if you've been sick, unable to have sex, if you've been in a place in a relationship where things weren't clicking, now they are. If perhaps you got a piercing of some kind that prohibited any sexual activity for a certain amount of time, and you couldn't disturb the piercing without causing problems, let's say. So you had to wait for maybe 2 weeks, maybe. Look, let's just... Timing isn't everything. It ain't fucking nothing.
Kris.
Number 9 for me is the Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune is about flux. It's a reminder that nothing is absolute or permanent, which may hit you during sex as a painful thought. This relationship can't last forever. Or a hopeful one. This horrible handjob can't last forever. At its best, though, this fuck reminds you that sexual roles and tastes can always shift. I'm getting very personal in this episode. I've had the privilege of being the grump to a number of very cute sunshines. I'm so habituated to it that my grump boner rises with an almost audible grumble at the merest sight of a cute, short-haired person with a wide-eyed smile. But I'm wiser, happier, and definitely hornier for that one time when I was about to grouse about some inconsequential thing. And one particular sunshine responded, I quote, "Fuck off," then scratched my itch for a mean fuck in a way I've rarely experienced. Good news. It turns out you can't trust the nice ones.
And Dan?
My number 9 is the sun. You're starting to have second thoughts about your decision to vacation in a foreign country by yourself. Yes, the food is terrific, the city and countryside alike are gorgeous, and the weather is perfect, but you don't speak a lick of the native language. You're standing on a street corner, trying to make heads or tails of the directions that the concierge gave you to get to the beach, when one of the locals approaches you and asks in accented English if you need help. He's tall and broad-shouldered, with a smile that makes you go weak at the knees, and an absolutely infectious laugh. Over the next 2 weeks, he shows you all the places that aren't in the tourist guidebooks. The hole-in-the-wall restaurants, the speakeasy operating out of an old church, the wildflowers that have sprouted up through the floorboards of the abandoned warehouse, and you fuck in each and every location.
This is a good number. It's only getting better. Number 8 for me is the moon. Am I the one who ranked this one the highest?
You are.
Wow. All right. Well, I take nothing back. I'm just going to say it. They're a somnophile. Is this a safe space? I mean, not really, because it's the internet. But if you're listening to this show, statistically speaking, you're probably cool. So I'll admit that I'm into some consensual somnophilia. And for those unaware of the kink, it's the desire to have a sexual encounter with someone who's asleep.
No, I've read many a fanfic. Namaste.
On that note, Bob.
Big feels. Judgment. It is often the case that sex makes things complicated, or that sex itself is the complicated thing. Sometimes, though, every now and then, you have a sexual experience that suddenly makes everything crystal fucking clear. It's not the best sex, it's not the hottest or the funnest, freakiest, nothing. It is the sex, and I think all of us here have had it, the sex where you go, oh, this person, this is the person. It is knowing something you cannot then unknow. I can't rank it as high as like good sex, but it's still the kind of sex that makes you believe in fate because of how miraculous it is that you and this person are here now together. Now, I could make a joke about DOMs and judgment, but, you can get spanked for not saying sir anytime. You do not get slapped in the face with destiny every day.
Destiny is my penis. Kris.
My number 8 is strength. I love that this card is gendered feminine. I would bristle at any deck trying to change it, but I'm sorry, boners are idiosyncratic. My boner for gentle strength is all about being boyfriended. After this revelation, I will perhaps have lost some influence in the straight guy community, but if I have any cred left, let me tell you, if you've never had a boyfriend with sexy, strong arms who sweet talks you and always has a shy smile for you and yet has that twinkle in his eye from knowing goddamn well that you need what's in his pants, my fellow fellows, you are missing out. An arm around your waist from a boyfriend with some fight in him who could demand what he wants from you is too hot to miss. Get out of your own way. If only once, let yourself have a boyfriend.
Indeed. Dan.
My number 8 is the Chariot. At first, you thought you couldn't get any luckier when you managed to score tickets to the World Cup. But now you're here, and you're pretty sure that incredibly handsome midfielder keeps looking at you. Not just looking either, but smiling. At one point, he even winks at you. Then comes his amazing game-winning kick from halfway across the field. The crowd erupts into cheers. He's lifted onto his teammates' shoulders and holds the trophy overhead triumphantly as fireworks explode. You're on your way out to the parking lot when one of the people working at the stadium finds you. Apparently, that player has asked you to come to the locker room. He's not the most skilled lover you've ever had, and it's certainly not the most sensual or intimate encounter you've ever experienced, but the energy and enthusiasm is out of this world.
And go smell all nasty from doing all them sports.
Yeah. Smell like sweat and grass.
Yeah.
Now for number 7, for me, that is justice. They will give you the most attentive and fulfilling BDSM doming of your life. Beforehand, justice will ask you what all of your limits and desires for the scene are, and then they will deliver. However, that's kind of all they're into. Bob's shaking their head.
No.
Yeah. So, what about you, Bob?
The Star. I don't remember which podcast it was on. Odds are it was this one, where I said that I wanted to be a cleric whose healing spell was cast blowjob.
That was this podcast.
Thank you.
Yep.
I wasn't fucking joking. It is not the coolest thing about me that the 2001 Keanu Reeves, Charlize Theron masterpiece, Sweet November, made me go, can I be a manic pixie dream fuck as a career? Is that a thing I could do? But I am who I am.
And who I am is a cleric whose only hymn is Marvin Gaye's Sexual Healing. Number 7, that is too appealing. I want it.
And Kris?
Number 7 for me is The Fool, and this is Big Feels. There are a lot of ways that I'm foolish, but not many ways that I'm fool-like. For example, I'm rarely accused of being spontaneous. But even I occasionally do something unplanned without thinking through all the possibilities, the various pitfalls. And when that hits in sex, it can be electric. Sometimes you've got a whole sexy weekend planned in a Google Doc, color-coded, if your sex alignment is lawful horny like mine. And all the planned stuff is good, but then there's that moment when you're face-to-face and you're looking at this person with their mouth open, chasing an orgasm like they're gasping for air, and you're fixated on it as only a lawful horny sex monster can be. And then their lips start to meet, but you're chasing something too. And you're so fully absorbed in the moment and in your partner that you order them, keep your fucking mouth open. And their mouth opens instantly, like you've been training them for years. No plan, no negotiation, not optimally safe, but goddamn if finding that subs button was not the highlight of the weekend.
Bob is doing poetry snaps. And Dan?
My number 7 is Strength. She lets you into the house and goes to freshen up. When she emerges moments later, she's holding a leash with a collar at the end.
Ooh.
Your name is on the tag.
Oh, we can do that next, babe, if you want to try that.
God damn, she was fucking prepared. When did she fucking put in that order?
She went to... No, you can get that done at Petco real quick.
Oh, I thought this was an Etsy custom job.
I guess it depends on how much she likes you.
She just has one of those, like, your name keychain situations in the back room with just a spinner rack.
Spinner rack.
All right, on to 6. For me, that is The Tower.
Yeah.
Ah, there they are. The horribly sad person at the end of the bar. If they want to forget for a little while, I'm climbing up that tower. And unlike Wheel of Fortune that can't seem to focus, the tower can appreciate the good in front of them. Or behind them, or over them, or you get the idea. Bob, what say you?
The devil. The hedonism. The rush of being in it and like using each other, like not even in a thoughtless way, but in a way that's like so about the overwhelming lust and desire that you feel for one another that like, yeah, yes, we care for each other, but in this moment, like we're just sex objects. And even like just being a sex object, like once you have been ordered to do something, that's perfect. Yes, today, Satan. And you know what? Maybe again tomorrow morning, buddy.
Kris?
Number 6 for me is the Empress, which I interpret as mommy dom. I mean, I say mommy, but who the fuck let the gender binary into the Major Arcana? Encompassing all human fates is already a tough job for 22 cards without splitting them into a boys section and a girls section, like the fucking children's section at Target. Anybody, regardless of gender, can give you a nurturing, pleasantly controlling fuck with a weird and a good way power dynamic. And something about like the affection, the superiority, the taboo, it just does it for me. That mix from either side. As long as somebody is firmly sent to bed, given a benignly condescending bedtime orgasm to help them sleep, and then gets to say, thank you, daddy, or thank you, mommy, as they drift off to sleep, I do not give a fuck whether I'm the one in the bed or the one kissing their forehead.
Tell it. And Dan?
My number 6 is The Magician. You match on Tinder and decide to go on a date. The entire time leading up to it, he keeps talking about how good he is in bed, how skilled he is, how much he's going to blow your mind. At first, this talk excites and intrigues you, but quickly it starts to irritate you. You consider canceling the date, but you ultimately decide to go through with it, just so that you can tell him, to his face and with demonstrable evidence, that he sucks. And then the night comes, and he's just as good as he said he was. He's not only full of himself, he's justifiably full of himself, and you deeply resent every single perfect orgasm he gives you.
Man, I don't know how to feel about that one. Too proud. My problem. Anyway.
I know. I'm like, oh, I feel like I have to turn it down just because I'm like, but fuck that guy. But also, fuck that
guy. All right, on to number 5. For me, that's strength. They are the big and powerful who wants to feel small and helpless. Now, I usually prefer to be topped by people bigger than I am, but I'm versatile, and I do find larger, stronger folks being reduced to blushing, whimpering simps to be quite cute. MeganBob?
The hermit. I know.
Only this low? Only?
I know. Not my greatest fucking weakness, but my greatest fucking weakness. The cryptid fuck. Like, touching someone's loneliness, so much more intimate than anything sexual you could possibly do. And it's like an inevitable precursor to sex. The hermit has to let you in enough to have sex with you, and you're inevitably going to see all the tells that they don't get close to people. And that makes you special. And that makes this special. Also, Bigfoot. I don't know if you're listening, but if you are, we can make a connection, baby. I'm on the internet. Come find me.
All right, Kris, what's your 5?
My number 5 is the Hierophant. Allow me to quote, "A hot for teacher fantasy evokes tension between the anxiety of being judged and the liberation of accepting judgment. The teacher, after all, holds the power of evaluating the student's performance and conduct. But must we look at the teacher's sometimes exacting scrutiny as a test? Might it be instead an opportunity to flout all the rules, to cross the line and to pay the price of judgment for the thrill of transgression?" This is from an essay I wrote about being hot for teacher. Why? Because teacher wanted me to. Because teacher gave me a fucking rubric. Tell me I've got a fucked up relationship with authority. I won't disagree. But if you've never felt the distinctive boner from dropping your pants for someone who's grading you according to a Word doc with tables, you're missing out.
I feel like I shouldn't be surprised by this at all. It's like I learned something about you, but I didn't really.
You were like, oh, the guy who did MDC. Oh, yeah, okay. All right, yeah. This is all.
Yeah. It's all connecting very, very easily. Dan.
Big feels. The devil.
Yeah.
This guy. This fucking guy. Every time you think you can finally forget about him, your phone buzzes with a "you up?" text from him. You made the mistake of lending him the keys to your apartment once, and he made a copy of it. Oh. So now, you'll regularly come home to find him going through your fridge or using your Amazon account to binge the filmography of Tom Green again. He's crass, he's rude, he doesn't brush his teeth or engage in any kind of grooming practice whatsoever. You nearly lost your job because he walked into the living room naked and high while you were on a Zoom call with a client. He's toxic in the worst possible ways, and yet you can't bring yourself to cut him out of your life because the sex with him is just that good. He is bad for you. He is awful for you, but you just can't help yourself.
I feel like you're just, as we go up your list, you're just getting angrier.
Yeah, I am.
On the list.
So, I mean, it's true that sometimes the best sex is the worst for you. So.
Yeah, exactly. You would leave him if the sex weren't that good.
By the time we get to 1, Dan is going to be screaming. Well, let's find out. Number 4, for me, big feels... you're getting more gasps for you, Bob. The Hermit.
Yeah. So proud.
The Hermit is a friend of a friend who keeps to themselves, that loner artist type, but somehow circumstances bring you together. Sidebar, I love loner artist types. I married Dan after all.
Mm-hmm.
The Hermit, besides being very reserved, is just not great at communicating what they want, but I can tell they know what they're doing. So as long as I'm patient and keep coming back for more, I just know I'm going to break down that wall and break down walls of my own, because I know I can't really get to the core of another human being without being super vulnerable myself. I'm aware that the Hermit is traditionally a peepums, But I'm basing my fuckability readings off of the meanings of the cards more than the Rider-Waite illustrations, okay?
Okay, we're not going to make you fuck a peepums. It's okay.
I'm true to my anti-peepum self. Only secret peepums. We've established. Only vampires. Bob.
Death. Have you ever come so hard it changed the course of your life?
No.
I will not say it is always what you are ready for, but I don't think you're ever sorry you got undressed.
Kris.
Okay, it's an interesting overlap here. Number 4, the High Priestess. I didn't expect this one to rate so high for me, because to me, it's about the kind of sex that doesn't need words or concepts, and that's rare for me. I love words, I love concepts. Throw in the sound of my own voice, you've got my top 3 fandoms. Also a podcast, not coincidentally. But rarely those moments of quiet spiritual intimacy do come along. They transcend anything rational, and they're irreplaceable as a part of my sexual history. They're the pat of butter on the whole wheat toast that is part of the complete breakfast of my sex life. I've cried in a sexually intimate situation one time. It was amazing. It was profound. Do I want it every time? I don't know. Do you want a butter sculpture of Michelangelo's Pietà for breakfast? I don't, but I also don't want dry fucking wheat toast.
And Dan?
My number 4 is Temperance. If you are a bottom, she is a top. If you are a dom, she is a sub. The two of you fit together in a way that seems designed. 2 puzzle pieces perfect for each other. There is little in the way of the unpredictable, the thrilling, or the exciting to this fuck, but it is impossible to not walk away from this feeling deeply fulfilled.
On to number 3. Don't judge me. Or do. I don't care. The lovers. Be cautious with this fuck, because as we've kind of stated already, this is the couple looking for a unicorn. Now, I don't mind being used like a toy by a couple of hotties, but there's going to be moments when it's clear that my needs and feelings are not their priority. Oh well, I'm not marrying them. Bob?
The fool. I know, not into the inexperience, but think back to when you were last completely stupidly intoxicated with sex. Stop for 1 second and think about the way that felt when you were able to unleash it. Or, better yet, when someone was completely stupidly intoxicated with you, wanted nothing more than to touch you. You know, in cooking, you can absolutely appreciate someone with a refined palate who has thoughts about what they want. But equally, sometimes it is very nice to cook for somebody who is unbridled appetite.
Kris?
Number 3 for me is justice. Is there any sentence hotter, more satisfying, or more intimidating than I'm going to give you what you fucking deserve?
Oh.
If you think so, possibly you don't deserve the shit I deserve, because it gives me goosebumps. I'm not talking here about generic shame or punishment stuff. Not that I'm above that. I'm talking about somebody who knows you well enough to really make it sting by hitting your actual soft spots. Obviously, I can't get into specifics here. That is for people I'm sexually intimate with, which, contrary to all appearances, is not the listenership of this podcast. But let me just say that being sarcastically called a good person beforehand puts a blowjob in a whole new light. It's like using your teeth, except that I recommend it.
Dan?
My number 3 is the star. You've been single for a while now, intentionally so. Your last relationship went bad in a pretty profound way, and the thought of starting another relationship from scratch when it could go just as bad again leaves you feeling profoundly exhausted. So you aren't looking for anything, not really. But once you notice this girl out at the club, you just feel drawn to her. She invites you back to her place, and you go against your better judgment, and you have a really great time. She's fun and flirty, she's kind and thoughtful. You can tell she isn't especially experienced, but that just means that she really seems to value the time that you spend together. You finish together, and as you lie in bed, she puts her head on your chest, and her arm around your waist. And you allow yourself to think, maybe there is something good for me out there after all.
Dan, am I your star?
You certainly are.
I got some jugs, I guess. And on that sweet note, number 2. For me, that's the Empress. She is the queen, or, Empress, of foreplay and aftercare. Much more emotionally gentle than the High Priestess. Bob.
Oh, okay.
Look, we go on long enough.
I know.
All
It's
these.
true. The sun. It's fucking amazing. I am just going to say that I hope for everyone listening, this is my wish for you, that you have grinned like an idiot during sex because you were so happy and so in love with your partner that you couldn't help it, that you have come while laughing with joy. I hope that you have had that.
And Kris.
Number 2 for me is the Lovers.
Hey.
Maybe I've taken too many poetry classes, but I think this card might be about sex. Symbolically, though, it's about choice. It's about connecting with someone so perfectly that you can almost hear the click. And it's about what I am with a specific partner. So I had a fairly long-standing sexual relationship that kind of trailed off with someone who's pretty staid. Like, I forgot tongues were even in kissing. I acclimated to that. The very next partner I had after that, indeed, I think the very first sexual interaction, this was late night, like stealing a moment together kind of thing. She gave me this look, and I was expecting her to maybe talk dirty, which would have struck me as daring coming out of the PG era of my sex life. She put her hand between her legs, then brought her fingers to her mouth and meticulously licked them off while holding eye contact. I didn't just hear the click, I just about clicked in my pants. It was amazing. And I was a different person with her. There's nothing like the fuck that is not only hot and deeply connected, but is singular as a fucking fingerprint to what you and this one person can do together.
Clicked in my pants. That's very good.
Dan.
My number 2 is the High Priestess. You're sitting alone in a bar after being stood up by your Tinder date. The bartender, a middle-aged woman with arms covered in faded tattoos, picks up on your misery. Before you know it, you're telling her all about what's been bugging you lately. Not just this failed date, but all the feelings of sexual inadequacy you've been struggling with, and the loneliness and feelings of inferiority that inevitably follow. She listens thoughtfully. Then she turns the sign on the door to closed. She draws the shades, and she starts unbuttoning your shirt. When you emerge from the bar hours later, not only have you learned several new tricks that you can't wait to try out, you feel somehow spiritually refreshed, as though your sense of malaise that had seemed so heavy and ever-present earlier that night was now just a bad dream you can barely remember.
Well, I think with all that, we're finally ready for the tippity top. The best card. For me, that's, maybe not surprising, the Fool. Bob is nodding. Longtime listeners know that I love the inexperienced. It's my kind of cute. However, the Fool is also down for anything. Will the sex be perfect? Absolutely not. I'm almost guaranteed come in my eye. But if you're afraid of being just temporarily blinded by jizz, you're holding back the limitless potential of your sexual gratification. Get over here, you dumbass.
Yeah.
Bob, who's the best?
Oh, I can feel my brand crumbling as I say this. Big feels. The Lovers.
Pearls across the land clutched.
I know. It's not necessarily sexy. It's not necessarily perfect. It is, I say just, it is just the kind of sex where you fall into another person. I think about this line a lot whenever I think about what sex is whenever it comes to this card. I want to feel the same thing you feel at the same time you feel it, so that we are cheek to cheek having the same soul deep, daring sensation of excitement and acceptance. It is letting someone in. It is being let in. It's being naked, truly and completely naked together in a way that is so far beyond the bodily as to render the bodily almost an afterthought. More than any other card, this does not represent one fuck. This represents the space between you and another person and the entire private world that you inhabit together. There is nothing you can't be together and nothing you can't have together. This isn't one thing. It is everything.
Wow. This is definitely the most personal of all the hard choices, I think. Kris, blow our fucking minds.
I don't know. I don't know if I can follow it, but my number one is judgment, and it is big feels.
Oh.
The imagery does not support taking this card lightly. We do not technically know what kind of judgment this angel is raising the dead to face, but it doesn't seem like a traffic court kind of situation. This is big. This card is about awakening to a vast, irresistible truth. And for me, that brings one experience to mind. We join this fuck post-fuck. I already came. They already came. We've had a moment to let it settle, so the post-coital brain chemicals are flowing. I arrive at that moment of beatific clarity when, in the normal course of events, I would think something like, I wonder if we have ice cream. But instead, I think, or rather, I directly understand with my entire physical being, I'm in love with this person. And the sound of that realization inside me has no echo. It is a bottomless truth of who we are together. I'm content, but it's not contentment to have done this. It's contentment to do this, hopefully forever.
No. That was good. No. I'm falling apart. That's number one. All right, Dan.
Yet another big feels. Death.
Ooh, yum yum.
You've been together with this guy just shy of 3 years, and the two of you have been through a lot of ups and downs together. You moved in together probably quicker than you should have. He supported you when you lost your job. You were there for him when his mom passed away. But you just got an offer for a dream job on the other side of the country. He doesn't want to leave his hometown, and neither of you have any interest in trying to do the long distance thing. The end has come sooner than you would have liked, as it always seems to do. Your bags are packed and you're waking up early for your flight tomorrow. Tonight is your final night with the guy who, at one point, you thought could have been the one. It's a night of kissing, laughing, and sobbing, of staying up late and trying all your favorite positions as well as the ones you've been wanting to try but putting off. You've had sex with him many times before, but the sudden knowledge of its finality makes it all feel new and special again.
Jesus. All right, audience. Hope you enjoyed that, all that crying.
I know. There's tissues everywhere for all kinds of reasons.
Lots of fluids are getting expelled today.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Excellent. Well, now that the cards have been read, it is time to unpack. Well, you savage bitches, get on with it.
I got one. Kit, you're number 2. The Empress.
Uh-huh.
Very short for a number 2. I would love to. You've got Queen in all caps here and very little explanation. I would love to know more.
She's very good at the foreplay and the aftercares. I don't think.
How?
And
okay.
She
so
was
you've
one that listened. Hold on, I have this. My
okay. No, of course.
Husband, I'll send you back. When I was doing the card stuff, I wasn't doing it as I think Kris did it incredibly well, where you really did think about the upright and the reversed meanings. And I don't like the math shit, but when you talked about it, I was like, okay, this makes all the sense to how to like see a person. I did that, but worse. And for the Empress, I felt like I couldn't really. She had very little bad. That's kind of what it all really was.
Interesting.
I forgot what the like reversed Empress is. I do remember, like, Dan's negative opinion of the Empress was always on her Bluetooth.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
She's all about the hustle, I think, is kind of how I read her as a character.
Oh, so she got money? Yeah, no, she's number 2.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Kit, because you specifically highlighted the Empress's foreplay and aftercare. How do you think the actual sex is?
I mean, it's good.
Okay.
I think she.
Nothing more specific. Just 8 out of 10s across the board for the Empress.
Yeah. The Russian judge is still going to be a little tough on this one. I think it's because I value foreplay and aftercare so much that it's just like, yeah, I mean, the sex is sex. You find one.
The sex doesn't need to be amazing as long as sort of like everything around it is.
I am, as a sort of, I think it kind of came up with the sun that I do like a sweet, caring person, unlike Bob. I like that sweet, sunny. That is my type of girl. And when I told Bob that, their mouth dropped. They did not understand, did not compute, but yeah, no, that is my type. I have found that out in real life. I like a sweet, and I kind of see the Empress as just the positives of like femininity. That's my thing.
That's really interesting because, as you mentioned, I did this in a similar way that you did, and I think the Empress ended up in a similar spot because to me the negative was like unsexy sweetness. It's like the person who like every time it has to be like, I love you, I love you, I love you. And there's no traction there. But on the other side of that, like I sort of interpret it as like mommy dom. And it's like, if you tell somebody, hey, like we did mommy stuff, it's like, oh yeah. And how were they? Like, who the fuck cares? Like what, that's not the point, it's the whole situation, the whole dynamic is the point. So I get that. I think, yeah, I think we actually lined up really well on that one.
Thanks. High five. High five, bro.
Thank you for giving me the accent on the last word. I appreciate that.
Well, the channeling, it comes and goes. You don't control it.
Dan, I was really interested. Okay, temperance, you talked about fitting together like puzzle pieces. What is it about that card that to you says like the complementary aspect?
Well, because to me, the card is about balance. And, I will say that, like, I can admit that I was a little bit inconsistent in terms of the reads that I would give to these cards, because in some cases...
tarot?
Yes, I know. Shocking. In some cases, it was me trying to, like, translate the card into a person and then trying to imagine what an encounter with them would be like. And in other cases, it was more like me trying to translate the encounter itself, like translate the card into the encounter, right?
Yes.
And so that was a little inconsistent. With temperance, I felt like because the card is about balance, I just interpreted it as, well, temperance is whatever you lack or whatever you need, right? It's like, to the extent that sex is an act between two incomplete people, temperance is what you need to complete yourself. So that was the way that I kind of thought was the most interesting way of thinking about the card, as opposed, because like, I thought about it, and one read that I considered going was one that I think, at the very least, I think Kit had. This is just a person who's very responsible, very much about like, being even keeled and like not, making reckless decisions or whatever. And I considered going that route, but I thought it was more interesting to think about like, well, this is the person who like, whatever it is that you need they're there for you. And it still didn't even rank at the top for me because, like, definitionally, that's gonna be good sex, but it's not gonna be the most interesting sex. And I feel like to get at the top of my list, you need to be good and interesting. Temperance was, like, definitionally as good as you can get, but not as interesting as you could get.
Okay. I like this, like, the idea of balance and the idea of, like, well, if it's about balance, then whatever it is you need, the other person then has to be like providing the other part of that. All right.
It's like a shapeshifter doppelganger sex.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Bob, can I ask, how is it that you came to your reading of strength? Because kind of the image that you painted was of you and this other person kind of being in an emotionally troubled place, soaking wet from rain, and just sort of like seeking shelter. Where did you get that reading of strength from?
It's just like one of the readings of it is like kind of just intense emotion, or like a kind of just strong feeling. So I just turned it up to 11 and was like, what's a really intense kind of fuck? And I mean, you can have an intense happy fuck, but really the most intense fucks, I mean, you know, you're number one. The intense fucks of your life are always going to be the ones that are fraught. So that one felt like if I was going to be interested in what strength had to offer, it had to be like, I want the emotional aspect of it. And I definitely would prefer that it be like Sturm und Drang, you know?
It sounds to me like what you're saying, Bob, is that like sunny, optimistic sex is for losers. Do you agree with that?
I mean, given who Bob's number 2 is, I feel like that's not a road that Bob can completely walk.
No, it depends. It depends wildly. Like, what I think is that you should, I mean, is this going to be a referendum on my, like, philosophy of what sex is?
It's a referendum on whether you're a loser, is what it really is.
The underpinnings of the show itself, the girders, the steel bars supporting this fucking structure that we are within right now. Like, no, we don't have enough time, but no, it's not for losers. There is a kind that is for losers, but no, It is not inherently for losers.
Okay, that's fine.
MeganBob.
Yes.
You did little cheating during your readings.
Probably.
Temperance. You ranked temperance very high.
I did.
Because you only focused on the reverse, the party temperance.
I know, party temperance.
If you were including the whole temperance, where would temperance be?
Oh, man. Probably very near the bottom. Just because for me, it's... I mean, all I thought about was, like, kind of the aspect of, like, reasonable kind of... Not necessarily restraint, but kind of, like, being responsible, that kind of thing. And I was like... What do I like in my sex? Not that. And so, like, you know, if nobody's bleeding a little bit at the end of this, did we even have sex? And so, yeah, I was like, you know, if I want to focus on, like, what is there actually here about these cards, I was very idiosyncratic. I was just like, I have bitten only the parts of these chocolates that I care to eat, and the rest have been left on the plate.
It's a really weird metaphor.
I know. I forgot. What's the thing that you like? There is, because I was like trying to think of like the thing that you eat and you just like eat around the parts that you only want, but I don't remember what that food is.
I mean, I guess a peach, right?
I mean, traditionally one does not eat the pit if you're not looking to die.
I do want to like bluff someone at some point though with a peach, be like, you don't eat the fucking pits? What's wrong with you?
Oh no. I mean, that's how you end up eating a peach for hours. You know, you spend like 5 minutes on the flesh and then just try to get through that pit. So when I was trying to like characterize these cards, one issue that I kept running into is kind of how similar a lot of them are in terms of like what they represent. And in particular, I found that the Magician, the High Priestess, the Hierophant, and the Hermit in particular, and a little bit the Hanged Man, all kind of came across as like mentors, you know, or like sources of knowledge. And so for me, like the tricky part that I was trying to get at was like, what's the difference in terms of like the experience of offering knowledge from these different perspectives? And like, why is it that we would value one over the other in a sexual experience? So I'm curious as to like why it is that of those cards, of the ones that are like traditionally associated with mentorship or knowledge, that like you guys found them like, you know, one or several of them to be especially appealing or unappealing, or, you know, kind of like what that says to you about what it is that you look for within a, in an encounter like that.
I don't know that I considered any of them in that light, but that's mostly because I don't think that's how I approached any of the cards. Like, I thought about them as the kind of fuck that a lot of them are. Not all of them, but many of them as, like, the sex itself rather than a person.
Right.
So I wasn't thinking about the mentorship aspect, but yeah, I guess I did end up, because I put the Hermit highest, but I wasn't thinking about that. I guess Hierophant is a little bit more that for me, just because, like, all right, if you have a taboo, that implies that you have something that's a structure to subvert. And so it's like, yum.
That's interesting, because to me that kind of goes against what the Hierophant represents.
Well,
right?
I did go with the reverse because I'm a baby who only wants to eat the part of the peach that's edible.
Right. You want to avoid the pit. Yeah. So, Bob, that brings up an interesting question for you then, because Kris kind of looked at the cards as a whole and sort of, balanced them out based on the usual reading versus the reverse. With Kit and I, or at the very least with me, I think you were the same way, Kit. I just looked at the kind of, upright standard reading. But you kind of picked and chose, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. No, I went all over the fucking map.
Were you consistent in how you picked and chose? Was it like you picked the reading that appealed more to you from a sexual encounter? Or just like, okay, all right.
That's it. It was purely like a boner-led process.
No, I appreciate that. That's very silver lining. You were really being optimistic about it. Like, what's the best scenario for each of these?
You know how, like, they'll have the little crystal on a pendulum and just, like, swing it around and see what the fuck happens? I don't really understand any of this stuff. I'm not a scientist. But, like, it's that, but, like, just for the boner. That's what I did.
You're dowsing for boners. I got you.
Yeah. Kris, this is much more personal than you have ever been on this feed ever before. I just feel like I have to. What do you want to say something? Do you want to like offer an explanation of your choice? Also, like, frankly, Kris, why now? You had an opportunity with fucking vampires, and yet here you are fucking getting it out for the tarot cards. Where was this whenever fucking Alucard was looking for what's in your pants? Come on.
First of all, what a weird pick, Alucard. I would never. Like, sorry, Kit, but Jesus Christ.
No, I remember how different your taste is from mine on that episode.
Mm-hmm. Very different. More correct, I would say. I
didn't say I was correct. I know I'm a pervert.
No, I think it's now because, tarot cards are symbolic. And so this actually, for those who followed the Hard Choices extended continuity, in Weird Choices and punctuation, we had the same issue where it's like, I can't fuck a semicolon, as much as an English major, I may want to, I cannot. And so
I don't know. There is a gap in there. You could, you find a semicolon large enough, you could slip it in there.
That's true.
Is it?
I don't know. Look, we have to put this aside for now. Obviously, we need a part 2 to punctuation. The fans demand it. But for now, we're talking about tarot. It's symbolic. And so I can't talk about fucking these actual cards. I can't treat them as people, because if I do, then when I get to the tower, it's like, okay, like, how does a building compare to, a priestess? So I have to turn them into like an abstraction of what sex can be like. And that has to come from my own experience, right? If I'm going to be honest about it. So I think that's why I chose to be a little more personal with these, as well as like in kind of like airy-fairy like idea that because this represents the totality of existence, like all divination methods, it's meant to capture the whole scope of human existence, that it should include actual events. I guess that's why.
It is beautiful to me that you are like, and now I have like inserted myself into the story of like the entire universe. No, this is a safe space. You were very brave. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty.
Not only brave, but I think like generous. Like it's an act of generosity to open yourself up to sharing such personal stories with, an audience of, I'm assuming, billions at this point. I haven't seen our subscriber count, but that seems right to me.
Sure. Yes. Billions, and also perverts. I want to say, like, just this audience.
Billions of perverts. That's our main audience. Yeah, this episode was interesting because it really feels a lot more like a Weird Choices episode than a traditional Hard Choices episode. I think the only reason it's on the main feed is because we wanted to talk about all 21 of the cards.
Yeah.
And we wanted to do it with a full cast,
Yeah.
So what this means is that we can't really approach these from any sort of objective perspective to whatever extent your average Hard Choices episode is objective. But like, we had to bring our own experiences and expectations and views on the world in order to like even approach the question of which one of these is the most fuckable,
Yeah, because I'm curious. Kris, we went like pretty autobiographical. I think I went like semi-autobiographical because I felt like that was the closest way in that I had for a lot of these. I was curious about what you're in to this because it is so kind of abstract. Kit, Dan, how did you kind of approach divination?
Like I said, I was a little inconsistent. I feel like for most of them, I tried to turn them into a person based on sort of what their card represented. And then, I tried to imagine like Hard Choices style, what a sexual encounter with them would be like. Whereas in other cases, when I thought it was more interesting, I tried instead to think of it as the card as representing a sexual encounter, right? So like in the case of Kit, like Kit interpreted the tower as a person, as like someone who had been through a lot of loss. Whereas I interpreted the tower as an experience that you were having, like a sexual encounter that ruins your life, essentially. So yeah, for me, it was a question of like, what makes sense, and when there are multiple options available, what do I think is going to be more interesting to talk about? Because like, I was the odd one out when it came to the lovers. Everyone else ranked the lovers quite high. And Kris and Bob, I think, you both characterized the lovers as like sex with your soulmate. That was a reading that I had as I was putting my list together. But what I ended up saying to myself was, well, I think that someone else is going to say that thing about the lovers. But I also have this other idea in my head of it being like, of you being sort of the toy of this couple that don't really care about you.
Dan!
And I was like,
we had the same idea. We had the same idea of what the lovers was, but I still ranked it really high because I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, you ranked it high. For me, it was like, for me, I think the idea of that experience of the sex in the moment of that experience is interesting and fun. But for me, the feeling of like afterwards being turned out and just like having to sit with yourself afterwards and sort of like realizing the lack of worth that you had in their eyes afterwards, like completely hamstrings that experience for me. Just that the feeling of emptiness afterwards swallows up any sort of like genuine sexual pleasure you could have gotten from that situation.
Yeah, this show is very personal, even if it's all jokes. Like, I mean, okay, I don't know what the percentage of honesty is on this show. I'm 100% honest about the fucking Pillsbury Doughboy. I can keep him away from me. But for like here and there, I'm more willing to make a joke than be genuine about what I want. Because, we have an audience, right? But, eventually some truth is going to spill out. And I guess it's up to the audience to determine how much is actually true. Parasocial, this relationship, y'all.
You have to fuck every single host that's ever been on the show in order to find out.
That's right.
Listen, I have that text document, but it's cursed. You can't see it.
Everything is unpacked. Everything is on the floor. We made a very sexy mess. Now it is time for my late husband, to reveal the truth.
So this list, we are starting at number 17, because we have some overlap. So number 17 is the bottom of our list, and that slot is taken up by the Emperor.
Okay.
Wow.
And that was a pretty consistently low-ranked card. The highest was Kit, who had it at 14.
It's like not into rigid control here.
Next up at 16, we have the Moon. Both Kris and MeganBob ranked the Moon very low, so that really drags it down.
And I love the Moon. I'm a big fan of her work.
Yeah. And yet, number 21 on your list, Bob. Number 16 on our master list. Number 15 is Wheel of Fortune. Tied for 14 is The Magician and The Hanged Man.
Okay.
At number 13, we have The Tower. So, obviously, complete and total disaster is not a deal breaker for most of us.
Hey, it doesn't stay there. You just gotta get through it.
Sure. Bob, I would argue that any sex you feel like you have to get through is not good sex, but you know what? The die is already cast.
There's an unreleased podcast out there somewhere that I, in fact, recorded with MeganBob that contains the phrase, "I can't jerk off to this, but I can jerk off through this."
All right, beautiful. So next up at slot number 12 is the Chariot. Tied for 11th place is the Hierophant and Judgment, which seems very thematically appropriate.
Yeah, those two. They belong together.
That's right. Our number 10 is Temperance. Our number 9 is the Devil.
Yeah, good job, baby.
Tied for number 8 is Justice and the Sun. Our number 7 is the Hermit, and I'm glad he got a spot to himself. He feels like he needs his space. Our number 6 is the Star. Our number 5 is Death. Our number 4 is the Empress. Our number 3 is Strength. Our number 2 is the High Priestess. And we have a tie for number 1.
What?
Between the Fool and the Lovers.
Whoa. You know what? That makes so much sense that, like, those two would pick up the Fool.
Oh, yeah. The Fool is definitely the third in that
He is,
particular
like,
menage.
Absolutely a third. A born, like, third.
Oh, he is the eternal third. You have him, like, marked as such in your phone for, when the occasion arises.
Yeah. Oh, man. Just such, like, always a third, never, like, first choice.
That's right.
Such a happy grinning, like, there are 3 people in sex? Like that.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the forever wow boobs. It is 100% the Fool.
Yeah.
So, with our list in its final shape, that means we can determine who our median is. And in this episode, our median is the Devil. That old bastard.
Yeah. You know what? It speaks well of all of us here today that we're like, yeah, middle of the road fuck. This motherfucker.
Except for Kit, who ranked the Devil 21, but
I mean, Kit's afraid of, like, the real bad juju for, like, with good reason.
Jesus, I ranked the Devil 21 and 1, and then it added up to the median. So I am with Kit on this.
Yeah. I think that means that just Kris knows exactly what he's talking about when he talks about finding the median. So, because you hit it, man.
Oh,
you
man, that's
it.
true. Oh, wow. What a Babe Ruth just out here, like, going, there, done. Walked out. You didn't even bat. You just looked at the ball, and the ball was like, all right, fine.
Yeah, you're right.
This is why I summoned him. He's unbeatable with analysis.
So good at the maths.
I feel like I must do a reading for 2023 based on the number 1 tie. It's going to be a year of new things. Come in the eye, but do not fear the come in the eye, because it may lead to true love.
That's beautiful.
And now we are prepared to rank the overall fuckability of the Major Arcana. And the world, the card that we left off, will be a sort of representation of that. So, MeganBob, how do you feel the Major Arcana fucks?
Because it represents the entire kind of human experience, I guess I am going to reveal myself as just somewhat of an optimist and say it's a 6. Because you have agency in the world. And so I think that you don't end up with a 50-50 split in like the fucks that you have in life. I think you get better than that. But I don't think that, because I mean, especially starting off, you know, you make a lot of, you go like, I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know how to find what I'm looking for. Let's just find out. And so I feel like 6 is about right. I could be very charitable and say like a 7, but that's a charmed life to get a 7. So I think 6 boners.
You know, I am going to give this a 7. And
Daniel Mulkerin, what kind of life have you led?
Well, you're right. The cards represent kind of the breadth of human experience, but they very specifically represent major moments in the human experience, you know? And I'm looking at my list, and so at number 14, I had The Hermit, which I interpreted as masturbation. And if ever a truer, perfect median could be established, I think it's masturbating.
Yeah.
It's like anything above that is good. Anything below that is like any fuck where you're like, I should have just jacked off. Like that's, you know, and for me, the true cosmic median was a 14 on this list.
Okay.
So I feel like it would be dishonest for me to not put this at least at like a 6 or 7, because it's just like, yeah, like there's a lot of bad on this list, but like all of it is interesting. It's all kind of like milestones in a human life. So I don't know. For me, that's a 7.
Kris.
Just to be pedantic, I want to point out, Dan, that your logic is very sound unless you are especially bad at masturbating, in which case your math is way the fuck off. But
how bad at masturbating?
I mean, Yates was famously bad at it, but...
All right. Well, I'm assuming that masturbating is the middle.
Okay.
So,
All right.
you know,
Fair enough.
If I'm wrong, then throw me in jail.
Okay. But no, for me, I think I'm going to rate this a 9. I think that
holy shit.
this look, these were highly fuckable cards almost across the board. And I think that the context, the fact that this represents as Dan said, the breadth of human experience, that is a necessary context for your whole sexual life. And so in a sort of universal sense, you have to have the entire scope of human sexual experience to experience the highs as well as the lows. And so to me, it's a 9, which is like, it is the beauty of human sexuality, which is a 9 because it is superlatively erotic and like important and profound, but not as sexy as Muppets. So it has to be 9.
Oh, you know what? Snaps, yes, 100%. Now, what could be as sexy as felt and some ping pong ball eyes, I ask you?
And the sweet voice of Frank Oz gently whispering in your ear.
Frank Oz.
I don't know.
Kit,
it's no Keith David,
how many
is
boners
it?
you got?
Oh, it's funny you mentioned the median thing. We were kind of talking about that before the show, Dan, weren't we? But we didn't tell each other what card we thought was the true median. For you, that was the Hermit, masturbation.
Yeah.
For me, that was Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah,
because
I thought you were going to say Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah. It was like, all right, truly.
And you had Wheel of Fortune at 16 on your list,
Yeah.
so that's quite low. That speaks very well of how fuckable you find this particular group of quote unquote characters.
I mean, maybe not. I am not a math man, so I'm gonna give this universe, if you will, a 5.
Okay.
I think it's kind of median of fuckability. It's what you bring to the cards.
Oh, shit. So it's like...
That makes a lot of sense.
It just holds up the mirror to you and goes, are you fuckable? And you're like, whoa, man.
And I am definitely only median fuckable.
Oh,
I disagree.
No.
That is the correct answer, Dan.
So that leaves us with an average boner rating of 6.75 for the Major Arcana.
Well, now we're here. It is almost time to pay. Oh, I didn't mention the fee. Yes, $60 an hour, and we're not done yet. When the podcast ends, I have a PayPal account.
Do you take Venmo?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I take being paid. MeganBob, what did you learn today?
I mean, obviously, look, we all learned a lot about Kris, but
Indeed.
I learned that Dan has fucking blossomed. I mean, maybe I learned this in the last episode we did together. I don't fucking remember. It's a blur. But these stories, these like visions, and also more than that, to hear you say, I would rather have interesting. I feel as though I have let go of the bike and you are off into the sunset and you're fucking monsters now.
I'm working on it, Bob.
I know. Look, he's gonna be fucking railed by the Loch Ness Monster by 2024, baby. It's a stretch goal.
Well, to the extent that I have grown and changed as a result of this show, it is more or less entirely your doing, Bob. You have shown me the way, and I've seen the beauty in the way that you see the world, and I'm happy to, if not share your perspective, then have at least shifted slightly toward your perspective, and I imagine we'll continue to do so.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, you're awakening to the wonders of the world. I mean, I know that you already experienced what it is to be a sub by editing something that you had no control over.
Yeah, man. That, well...
I know, it ain't nothing, is it?
That was maybe a mixed experience, but sure.
Well, you need a better Dom with better sound equipment, but you know.
That's true. That's very true.
Dan, what did you learn?
I think I learned how much hard choices is less a reflection of the characters that we're talking about and more a reflection of the hosts that are talking. Because this episode, I think, just highlighted that because we were required to do so much work to even, figure out what we were talking about in order for us to, objectively rank it. But I think it highlighted for me how much that happens without me even thinking about it on an average episode. It's like, well, who is this character? And more importantly, who am I? And what does that mean when those two things come together? I think it made me realize how much analysis I was doing already to more concretely defined characters without even really thinking about it.
And you, Kris?
I think that figuring out how to rate these cards, how to do the positive versus the negative, made me rethink how I rate all of the characters that we do in hard choices, where there's a best way that it can work out and a worst way that it can work out. And you always have to make a choice. It's interesting that it seems like Bob and Dan, Dan pretty much chose the upright versions and Bob just kind of randomly picked what was most interesting to talk about or what was most appealing. And then I landed on this in kind of the way that that Kit did. But we rarely talk about the worst fuck we could have with a given character. And I think if I've learned nothing else, it's from Dan's presentation here, we could have a hard choices episode that is all just really sad stories about bad fucks. And I'm sure the fans would be fine with that. So maybe we should try it sometime.
We are planning on doing an Oops All Medians.
Well, that episode has already aired by the time this episode comes out.
We did an Oops All Medians. What if we did an Oops All 21s? The worst of the worst.
Then I would have to talk about Kefka again, and I just can't bring myself to do that. Kefka wasn't even 21 on that episode. Never mind.
Whoa! Wait, who was? I forgot.
Strago was the 21 on that episode.
I know.
Because Alex Roberts really wants to fuck Kefka.
Jesus. I think only people who survive get a vote for the All 21s episode, right? That seems fair. People who got killed by Kefka do not get to show up to the caucus and be like, no.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Just an absentee ballot that you mail in. Like before you go into the bedroom, you're just like, I'm just going to put this in the mail. And like,
in the event of my death.
in the very likely event of my sudden passing.
What did I learn? Kind of a little bit of what everyone learned, but just really pleased to see Bob's Lovers one. It was so sweet. It was like, oh, it's not just the guest hosts that are growing. Hey, Bob's growing too. Bob is like looking so like
Yeah, I think you've shown a real willingness to torpedo your own brand in order to be sincere about the way that you feel, Bob, and I think that that's great.
Bob is now retreating into a hoodie shell.
This is a transformation. Bob is going to have to duel their dark self, like in Final Fantasy IV, and they're going to emerge as the blowjob healer that they yearn to be.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. I am growing. I thought I would grow into a cooler person. Instead, I have grown into a person who I guess has like soft feelings also, but like real soft feelings? I don't know.
Yeah.
Look,
like domestically soft feelings.
Yeah.
It cannot be all cool motorbikes and cigarettes. It has to be loser sometimes. It's a balance.
It does, Yeah. Sometimes you are the loser, and it's fucking great.
Moderation in everything, including moderation.
No, absolutely not.
Including moderation. The last part's important.
Thank you so much for joining us, for stepping into this quaint shop and hanging out next to all of these crystals. We hope you've had a wonderful time staring at all of these cards with us. And now I would like to turn it over to everybody to offer their plugs. Dan Mulkerin, plug your stuff.
You guys know what I do. I do Garden Plots with Skeletor. It's a podcast that Bob writes for, and everyone on this call has appeared in at varying times. It's a show where Skeletor, from He-Man, has a gardening show, which he attempts to run by his own idiosyncratic book to varying degrees of success, thanks to the constant interruptions of his minions and the intricacies of life as a supervillain in an 80s cartoon. It's fun. I feel really lucky that I get to be a part of this show, that I get to act on it and edit it and be part of the be a part of the creative process, not a huge part of the creative process, but I don't know.
A big fucking part of it. I'll fucking fight you.
Well, all right. We'll settle this later. Okay. But yeah, I feel really lucky that I get to be part of it because it's a show that I really enjoy doing and that I enjoy listening to afterwards. So yeah, check it out. It's a good show.
Chris, what would you like to plug?
I do a podcast with MeganBob, Next Wrestling Fan. I'm the new co-host. Maybe I'm ruining the show. We don't know. We haven't recorded that stuff yet, but either it's working or it's not. Either way, it's probably worth listening to. So go listen to Next Wrestling Fan. Hear us talk about AEW for a little while, then hear us talk about NXT. I'm sure it's great.
Chris is a very good stepdad, from what I've heard. It's very funny. And he's gonna get the show pony. There, it's been said on more than one thing. Now it has to happen.
And it's me, the person who makes hard choices. The Patreon feed is slowly accruing bonus content. And also our Discord is a fun place to hang out. Is a good place where you can see pictures of orc butts, strong ladies, I don't know, all kinds of
hot wrestlers.
Hot wrestlers, everything. It's got a little bit of everything.
Monster fuck channel, furry, paired with furry channel, because it's the same thing. Stop pretending like they're different.
I know, they are the same thing. Lately, we talked about which municipal building was like a hot place to fuck. So, yeah, definitely a good Discord to hang out in. Yeah, come join the Hard Choices Patreon. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And come back next month whenever we handle Magic the Gathering and we planeswalk into some pants. Bye!
We gonna tap that ass for mana.
Yeah! This has been Hard Choices.
If you want to show your support and get even more goofs from behind the scenes, visit patreon.com/hard choices and become a patron. You'll get exclusive voting rights and participation in every weird new thing we do.
If you like the show, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review on the podcatcher of your choice. It shows people what's fun about the show and makes it easier for others to find it too. Hard Choices is produced by MeganBob. Our theme song is Funk Me by Soundroll. This piece and all music used in this production is licensed through Uppbeat. You can find details in our show notes and listen to more great tunes at uppbeat.io, spelled UPPBEAT.io. The Hard Choices logo is designed by Kit Mulkerin. If you'd like to get into touch with us, look for the Smash Fiction Fan Faction on Facebook and join the conversation. Thank you so much for listening and hanging out with us. You're a peach!